Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, everybody, for being here, and the Decorative Arts Trust, who has been very generous with me this past year. Truly, truly grateful. Throughout the early modern period, large numbers of Chinese porcelains were mounted in gold and silver by European metalsmiths. The 16th century holds a unique significance for this practice. During this time, while a notable number of Chinese ceramics reached the continent through Portuguese and Venetian merchants, the influx did not escalate to the level witnessed during the following century after the establishment of the Dutch East India Company. While early modern mounted porcelains have been traditionally studied in the context of collecting and display practices, this presentation will pivot to an account centered around the objects and their makers that acknowledges and amplifies their agency. Rather than passive products of assimilation, I propose to explore porcelain as an active participant in the creative process, unveiling a narrative in which the visual characteristics of the ceramics influence and shape the work of the European silversmiths fashioning them out. I argue that these interventions responded to the object's design, demonstrating a shared transregional artistic intent. I demonstrate that mounting Chinese porcelain requires a careful balance between preserving the aesthetic integrity of the ceramics and showcasing the craftsmanship and ingenuity of the mounts. European artisans adapted their designs to complement the porcelain's fixed qualities, ultimately creating objects that embodied both Chinese and European artistic sensibilities. The mounts served not only as functional additions, but also as semiotic tools for cross-cultural communication, transmitting ideas about beauty, material value, and craftsmanship. To ground this idea, let me begin with a striking example that is on display a few blocks from here in the Metropolitan Museum. A finely decorated blue and white bowl of the Wang Li period, enclosed in a meticulously crafted gilt silver mouth. 10 pointed panels of blossoming scrolls grace the exterior surface of the bowl, rising from the arabesque ring adorning the circular foot to a border of flying horses galloping through a stormy landscape of tidal waves and cirrus clouds. In each panel, the scroll stems from a central corolla-lobed jasmine flower and spread in an ascending and symmetrical fashion. While the grotesque element of the metalwork seemed to set the silver links apart from the ceramic body, looking closely at the meticulous details of the seemingly separate elements, we recognize that a rhythm unfolds as the mouth engages in a formal dialogue with the porcelain bowl. To emphasize the panels on the vessel, the silversmith has cast 4 vertical straps in the shape of caryatids surmounting a lion's head. The curls on the caryatid's head ripple like the stormy waves on the porcelain rim, and the loose strands of her hair echo the silhouette of the clouds. The proportions, placement, and profile of the lion's head mirror the jasmine flower in the panels. The minute silver dots emulate the buds sprouting from the rinceau of the twirling scrolls. The 2 curved handles, each in the shape of a trident with 2 entwined tails, are set against the profile of the Chinese bowl, following and accentuating its curves. Once again, the twisted loops created by the swingling of their tails retrace the lines molding the clouds at the border. Their wing-like arms curl in the manner of the crested waves. To better understand this logic, we need to turn to Jingdezhen itself. For instance, the notion of a continuous production in the Jingdezhen porcelain manufactures, where the concept of a finished object is absent, it is manifested in 2 ways. First, the production process of Jingdezhen was highly specialized and divided among multiple artisans, each contributing at different stages with a different system of kiln factories organized into smaller, physically separated workshops. And like in other manufacturing contexts, where collaboration is direct and synchronous, The artisans in Jingdezheng worked sequentially, each craftsman contributing while building upon the work of their predecessors. Yet, most would never see the final form of the object. Only the last decorator in the chain had the opportunity to view the nearly finished piece before firing. Each workshop functioned as a distinct unit, specializing in a specific aspect of porcelain production: clay preparation, forming, painting, or glazing. Yet, direct communication between artisans handling different stages of the same object was minimal, if not entirely absent. Instead, the object in progress functioned as the primary medium of coordination. As artisans received the vessel from the previous stage, they made quick yet precise decisions about how to apply their contribution, guided solely by the visual qualities left by their predecessors. This nonverbal mode of collaboration, reliant on observation, repetition, and technical fluency, took place both within individual workshops and across separate workspaces, underscoring a distinctive mode of indirect cooperation. This is a Zhejiang period stem cup from the collection of the National Gallery in Washington, D.C. This artifact in particular exemplifies the interplay between specialized artisans as seen in its seamless integration of form and multiple decorative techniques. Each stage of its creation, shaping, incising, glazing, and enameling, reflect the cumulative effort of different craftsmen. On the exterior, 2 5-clawed dragons, applied using the sleep trailing technique, pursue flaming pearls around clouds, while a ring of 11 lotus lappets encircle the base, symbolizing purity, harmony, and spiritual enlightenment. The interior of the cup mirrors the exterior design, featuring 2 incised dragons chasing flaming pearls. The physical form of the cup itself contributes significantly to its visual and symbolic impact. Its flared bowl, narrow stem, and tall foot not only creates a balanced and elegant silhouette, but also serve to enhance the display of the decorative motifs. The expansive surface of the bowl provides ample space for the dynamic portrayal of dragons, whose energetic forms and movement are accentuated by the open horizontal plane. The slender stem introduces a vertical dimension that guides the viewer gaze upward, emphasizing the interplay between the vertical and horizontal elements and inviting contemplation of the dragon's celestial significance. Furthermore, the copper ring at the mouth functions as a framing device, drawing attention to the more understated interior scene and demarcating the transformation between the decorative realms of the exterior and interior. The collaborative nature of this production is further exemplified by the specialized firing technique used to create the delicate, thin walls of the cup. To achieve this thinness while preserving the integrity of the stem, which could otherwise crumble under the kiln's heat, the vessel was fired upside down. This process left the rim unglazed, necessitating the later addition of a copper band by a metal worker, an artisan specialized in a completely different medium and workspace. In sum, the production of this bowl exemplifies an intricate coordination among specialized artisans, each anticipating the needs and expertise of the next in the sequence. The ceramist skillfully shaped the stem and body on the wheel, deliberately crafting a delicate, thin wall structure with the understanding that the kiln specialist would possess the technical expertise to ensure its survival through firing. Before the stage, an artisan incised the interior decoration, a step that had to be completed prior to the initial firing. The bowl was then fired upside down, an approach informed by the expectation that any imperfections at the rim would later be concealed by a metal mount. This sequence was essential to the subsequent application of overglazed decoration in green and yellow, where the incised patterns and painted motifs were conceived in dialogue with one another. Rather than independent embellishments, the surface treatments were executed in a responsive relationship, enhancing both the aesthetic and conceptual unity of the vessel. The sequential making process at Jingdezheng not only underscored the model of indirect collaboration on a singular piece, but also enables further enhancements of porcelain vessels beyond their initial production. The absence of personal authorship within the system challenges the very notion of a finished object. Without a designer overseeing the entire process, porcelain pieces remained open to modification, adaptation, and augmentation across different cultural and temporal contexts. This practice demonstrates a conceptual continuity with the manufacturing process at Jingdezheng, in which vessels were not static entities, but rather dynamic objects subject to ongoing material interventions. This is another illustration of this collaborative dynamic. So we can see that the porcelain made in Jingdezheng is accompanied by a matching cover and stand, unearthed from the tomb of Prince Zhuang of Liang. The deliberate mirroring of the dragon design on the gold cover reflects an integrated approach to object design, where the mount is not merely a functional accessory but an extension of the vessel decorative program. These were all made in China from start to finish. Now, if this production model at Jingdezheng was characterized by a sequence of skilled contribution without a singular authorship or a fixed endpoint, then the later addition of European mounts should be understood as an extension rather than a rupture of this process. While European metalsmiths affixed gold and silver mounts to Chinese porcelain, they were not imposing an entirely foreign system of augmentation, but were unknowingly participating in an ongoing tradition of reconfiguration and adaptation. This 1525 design for a coconut cup provides a compelling parallel to the collaborative and sequential production processing in China. Here, the design for wood carving was conceived in direct dialogue with pre-existing silver mounts, rather than as an independent artistic intervention. Here, the mounts are rendered with strong, thick lines, emphasizing the intricacies of the silver work, while the figurative program for the coconut carvings is more loosely sketched, adapting itself to the frame established by the vertical straps that the coconut connects the mounts at the mouth and stem. A note accompanying the sketch reads, "The gray bears from the promised land," indicating the intended image for the carving, alongside the loosely sketched figure of Lot, also labeled. The rim protruding lip features a striped frieze with the inscription Mount 1523, indicating the date of the silverwork. The design weaves together decorative motifs and metaphorical meanings, with the scrolling grapevines on the mounts evoking the themes of wine and its excesses. Artistic production, whether in China or Europe, could operate through indirect collaboration, where decisions then were conditioned by pre-existing material forms rather than by direct dialogue between makers. The effective power of porcelain vessels on 16th century beholders is well described by a pen and brown ink drawing of a pair of emblematic columns, each incorporating a Chinese porcelain vase, signed with in the middle with Albrecht Dürer's monogram, AD, and the date 1515. The joyous, whimsical, and plentiful character of the column on the left is exemplified by the design of two putti sitting on a stilbate, spewing air through a cannula, a play on the decorative elements of the fountains, perhaps. At the top, a lobed silver vase with a cover is decorated in a swirling fluted pattern at the stem and furbished with two scroll-shaped handles. On the lid, a glut of pomegranates and grape twirl along the silver handles, stemming from a plenitude of fruits. A blue and white pear-shaped bottle is equipped with two loop handles and rendered in blue watercolor. In straight contrast, the decorative elements of the right column appear rather sorrowful. Here, the stylobate and base are substituted by a drum in the shape of an upside-down barrel, simply held together by ropes. The figure of a crippled man is standing on the barrel, along with a beer bottle. The Chinese amphora, light in color and featuring dragon-shaped handles, has been stretched to better describe the columnar shape, and the dragon handles have been emphasized and elongated. The drawing, which Panofsky interpreted as representing the sanguine and melancholic temperaments, illustrates how individual porcelains could generate different, sometimes opposite effects, and how this could be made explicit by the choices made by the artisans working on them. By reconsidering 16th century mounted porcelains through the lens of an indirect collaboration, this presentation has sought to challenge conventional notions of authorship, completion, and artistic agency. The sequential and specialized production system of Jingdezheng already undermined the idea of a singular maker or a finished object, creating vessels that were inherently open to further transformation. The addition of mounts, whether in a Chinese or European context, should then be seen as a continuation of an established process of adaptation and reinvention. Thank you.